Hello and welcome to Marketplace on UC Today, your guide to the unified communications and collaborations market. I'm Tom Wright and I'm delighted to be joined by Erin from AudioCodes to discuss the Microsoft Teams space. It's great to have you, Erin.
Thanks for having me.
So there's a lot to talk about here and there's obviously a lot of components to Microsoft Teams. And to start with, I wonder if you could talk through how you see Teams fitting into Microsoft's wider vision for the hybrid workplace.
Well, you could say that it fits into a much larger set with a modern workplace, and hybrid workplace is a faction of that. Obviously, if we're focused on hybrid, the goal with hybrid meeting is, or hybrid work, is to make sure that the remote attendee feels as included, as co-creative as somebody sitting in the room. And a lot of times our experiences with, let's call them audio conference rooms, or, some of the old legacy iron, that exists in the marketplace today, that technology sometimes gets in the way. You can't hear, you can't see, and you certainly can't co-create. If somebody stands up to write something on a whiteboard, good luck, seeing that. You have to look at a picture afterwards or whatever the case is. So with respect to how does Teams facilitate hybrid, it really is a collection of how do we make sure that when we're together, we can be together, let the technology fade into the background, and just be human, and allow technology to prepare us in advance of a meeting with pre-context, post-context, follow-through, etc. So I think Teams admittedly is a little bit more complex than Skype for Business, and as it should be. It is not just instant messaging and presence. It's meant to really be a platform that helps us to accomplish things. And so that's my answer.
So if we think about sort of the concept of the hybrid workplace, it's all we've been hearing about for the last couple of years. So has it replaced sort of the idea of the digital workplace?
Yeah. I think replace and coexist is definitely where these two philosophies live. You definitely need the ability to, digital workplaces, by popular understanding, making sure that I have access to tools in the digital realm, irrespective of where my desk sits. I could be in another branch office. I can hot desk effectively to my business application or to the application layers of what I'm using. If we use some examples like intranet, SharePoint, CRM, etc. The digital workspace is really about the tools that we're using and where can I be in my wider area network, my WAN, right, or my local area network. I can be in different locations, and so it's not specifically concentric to tools, but it definitely speaks to that bandwidth, availability, and fluency with the applications. Hybrid meeting is more, hey, whether my employee is, like we just talked about, whether my employee is remote or in person, I still want to have that human experience, and I need to be flexible in the case of, dare I say, COVID-20, or, it's really what the pandemic has done is it's set a new benchmark with respect to survivability. I need to be able to survive outages with ISP. I need to be able to survive outages with, telephony. I need to be able to survive human not outages, but human realities where, hey, we don't want to be in the same building, right? And so with hybrid work, companies are going down this path, at least the companies that I interact with every day, of asking, how much brick and mortar do we need? Are people more efficient from home? What kind of work schedules, can we employ? And is working from home a risky proposition if I don't have any real measurement or metrics on the efficacy of my employee? Are we task oriented or are we hour oriented? And so those are kind of the two groups and how they relate to each other.
Okay, so if we look a bit more specifically at the technology and voice technology in particular, most organizations have invested in technology for voice. So should they run Teams in parallel with that technology, or is it better to integrate the legacy communications infrastructure with a cloud platform like Teams?
Yeah. Well, certainly as far back as OCS, Microsoft has made it clear that coexistence is a strategy. You can utilize the functions of teams uh, in all of their glory, right? In a coexistent capacity with your current tools, or I'll say plasticware, and hope that doesn't offend anybody, right? Legacy iron plasticware, right? So the principle is, or really the choice is between coexistence or coexistence with a point to migration. And I think, the rule of the day, at least for me, and I'm sure the wider audience is, anytime I can make my life simpler, less complex, and less costly, that's definitely where I want to go. So, yes, is the answer. Coexistence or coexistence with an eye to migration. I think at its core, though, is the question about the success criteria of a company. There are functions that I have to accomplish with an overhead speaker or with a da-da-da, and it's up to the system integrator, to the cloud solution provider ecosystem, the global SI, to really educate the world around, anything you can do in a standard legacy PBX you can do within Teams. If you're worried about contact center, there are solutions that definitely supersede your standard or even complex contact center functionality. And they can be a measure better, because now you can include, the components of video without, if you can imagine a contact center that's video enabled, I can now show the problem. And a picture paints 1,000 words. I have to describe the problem. I have to describe the problem to multiple tiers of contact center agents who may or may not be able to help me, versus, hey, we're just talking. Here it is. Here's the problem in the room. What do we do about it? So I'm getting a little far afield here, but Tom, to answer your question, the answer is yes to both of those paths, coexistence. You asked me which is better, and I'm a big fan of evolution. I'm a big fan of moving to a simpler existence, where communication is really just a subset now of productivity. For a while we have compartmentalized communication as what has to be this, it has to be this server, and we have to have these functions. Nope. Most BI, it has an eye to, most business intelligence has an eye to incorporate communication. So therefore, you could give an argument that productivity tools are the Pac-Man, and communications is the little glowing dot that's being gobbled up. Communications can be built into our efficacy tools.
And one of the areas that Teams is becoming increasingly entwined with is Microsoft Viva. So I'd be interested for you to talk us through how those two sort of technologies interact with each other.
Yeah, I get this question a lot. Well, one of the things that my organization does within AudioCodes, if I'm allowed to talk about it, is we do modernized communication workshops and hybrid meeting workshops for, large Fortune 1, Fortune 500 companies, to kind of talk about, all right, you're moving, and let's map the course. Let's look at the phases. Let's understand it accordingly. So when I do these workshops, I'll start in talking about Viva, and I always need to communicate that you're here to learn about room solutions and how to let the technology kind of fade into the background. Why are we talking about Viva? And why am I talking about connections and insights and learning and these things? Our goal with hybrid meeting is to reduce the amount of unnecessary meetings. I mean, the pandemic really was like, hey, you're working from home. I need to know that you're working, so we're going to be on meetings all day long, right? And so if you've ever sat in a chair and thought, this didn't really have to be a meeting, this is a IM or an email at best. What are we trying to accomplish here, et cetera? I think the challenge is to try to create a space where we can be as human as possible, co-create, and really get to that exciting aha moments that we're looking for, in our interactions with each other. And let's decouple the other asynchronous work that we need to do, and let's push that into learning management or into task management or into, follow through, etc. Insights is a really clear picture into how you spend your day. How many meetings are you on? Do you have focus time? Are you going to suffer from digital exhaustion because you're just back-to-back meetings every day, all the time, right? And so what Insights does is it says, how are you the most effective? It's not by being on back-to-back meetings all day long, and so giving yourself some focus time and some space. Learning is, how can I pre-inform my audience and make sure that either through testing or through consumption of material, that when we arrive in this meeting, we all got the briefing, right? We don't have to set it up and talk about who's who and, roles and goals. This is all defined. So that when we're there, we can say, all right, let's jump right in. Who's got an idea, right? And then topics is what I consider probably the most exciting part about Viva, and that's machine learning empowered, basically search, and that uses Teams as a conduit, as a place to where this search can occur. And so topics is, if I don't know what an acronym means, or I don't, while I'm in a meeting, instead of raising my hand and interrupting, I can do some search in the Teams channel, as an example, or I can look through the context of the Teams, or reach out to the, let's call it the family knowledge, the organization knowledge. Let's call it the family knowledge. Reach out to the organization knowledge to get a briefing on that. And that's extremely valuable to set the meeting up, to get the meeting going, to get into that creative zone, and then afterwards, what do we do about those actions? How many times have you walked away from a meeting and you're like, okay, I know we had some good ideas. Who's going to take action on that? And, I'll wait till told, right? And each of our meetings costs money, not just because of the, bandwidth and the technology and the electricity and et cetera. I mean, the human capital involved is substantial. So if we're having all these meetings, we need to be able to draw a line to the actionable, so that we can actuate. So that's probably too many words, more than what you asked for, but that's definitely how Viva plays a role within Teams.
No, that was great, and I think it plays into the final thing I wanted to ask you about, actually, which is AI and how AI can provide some of the benefits you just spoke of as well. We're obviously all talking about generative AI, and there's the trend of connecting voice to AI as well. So I'll be interested just to get your thoughts around how things are looking in that space, and specifically what applications the two could be kind of joined together to really benefit the user.
Yeah, it's almost the new frontier with respect to, let's call it the fourth cloud. Those of you who have been exposed to Microsoft's 3 cloud principles is really, okay, you have company knowledge, and that should live in Azure no matter where, right? It should be in Azure. That's what your company knows, and that's infrastructure as a service, storage, etc. Then you have, who has access to the knowledge? The second cloud is platform as a service, right? O365, what are the applications that we use? And who has roles-based access, or who can share what with who, and where does the security lie? What does your company know, and how does your company share what you know to the players in your organization so that you can be as effective as possible? And that third cloud is, now let's execute. And let's actually use software as a service, like Dynamic 365. Let's use software as a service to take action on, or react or respond beautifully to things pressing on the business, right? Needs pressing on the business. So again, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service. These are the traditional Russian nesting dolls, so to speak, of how Microsoft's cloud offer comes to market. Well, years ago, the theory of how do I make connections, we could argue that most AI is yes-no decisions and appropriate connections, right? The synergy between Bob talks to Jane and Bob worked on this particular thing, and therefore the next time they get together, I'm going to make that connection. I would even argue this is some of what's going on when you type out an email about downhill bicycles, and all of a sudden you get downhill bicycle ads in your Google inbox, right? So the point is just making those connections, right? It's not necessarily sentient. It's not necessarily self-aware. It's just associating itself to the actions and the activities that you've done, and how can it be most helpful. So in the past, in 3Cloud, Graph AI was that connective tissue. It was a way to say, you want to be in our walled garden because what you know, what your company is able to share, and what you're doing about what you know is all connected. And you have the ability to, see that across identity, across access. Then Microsoft goes and buys a large language model, ChatGPT, right? Or at least, let's say, makes a significant investment, right? This now becomes the new way to take action, or the new way to get some, let's call it virtual assistant, on maybe cobbling together the structure of a paragraph, putting together a presentation, using your connection, using what it knows about you and what you work on daily to make some sense of that with respect to what you're currently asking it to do. And so the large language model literally is now plugged in through Microsoft Copilot into Graph. And what they're starting to show, and what they're showing for the future, and coming very quick, is how those functions can be associated to your connections, and then those then are built into the productivity suites and the productivity solution that obviously Microsoft represents. And for us at AudioCodes, we're extremely excited. We've been doing this for years, plugging text to speech, speech to text into inbound conversational IVR for a customer, calling in to ask questions. We've all had bad robot experiences where a robot has really been tooled to almost seemingly keep us on the phone instead of putting us through to a person that we need to talk to. What a good robot is supposed to do is to understand what you need, confirm that with you, and then present that information to the recipient of the call so that they can more readily answer your question. So we've got a lot of experience in that. And what it now does, what AI and the massive focus that we're seeing around that, machine learning involved, is we're seeing now an open marketplace. Not everybody's going to use dynamic. There are organizations that will use SAP, SFDC, BYOB, fill in the blank, right? And the idea is, great, there's then lots of space for business intelligence confluence and pushing that to the graph within your productivity tools. And so we're extremely excited. Yes, it's all the rage, and it also gets a lot of sometimes negativity. People are worried that Skynet will take over and determine that humans are no longer fit, to be on the planet. But the core of AI is yes, no, relation, decisions, assistance, and that's where we are today. Sure, AI can beat us at chess. Can it also make our life simpler by being the best possible assistant in making those connections? And that's really what's exciting about communications, exciting about productivity, and all that space in between.
Yep, you're right, Erin. It's such an interesting time to be in the space, and I really appreciate you taking the time to take us through it today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you'll find more great content at the UC Today Marketplace, and we'll see you next time.